Hello and welcome everyone to the 2021 Virtual Compassion Action Healthcare Conference. I am Dr. Beth Lown, Chief Medical Officer at the Schwartz Center for Compassionate Healthcare, and I want to thank all of you for joining us for today's virtual arts experience, Sounds of Caring New York, an immersive short film. Please join me in welcoming our presenters. Agnes Barden is the Vice President of Patient and Customer Experience at Northwell Health. And joining Aggie today is Sven Gerlinger, Senior Vice President and Chief Experience Officer at Northwell Health. And we'd also like to welcome Yoko Sen, sound artist and founder of Sen Sound. Aggie, Yoko, Sven, we are so happy to have you here with us today, and we're really looking forward to learning and hearing about your work. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sven Gerlinger, and I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Experience Officer for Northwell Health. And we are so honored to present to you today and excited to share with you our Sounds of Caring New York short film. We'll describe the filmmaking process, which was all during the first wave of COVID-19. We'll share with you how we utilized this important piece as part of our recovery and resilience programming and drive home the power of creative arts on engaging in open dialogue for our healthcare professionals. This photo represents the day we first met Yoko Sen, the sound alchemist of Sen Sound. It was in December 2017, and we had the opportunity to attend this very inspiring conference in New York City called STIR, which was led by Sonia Rhodes from the Experience Lab. And this was an incredible gathering of creative leaders in a very immersive style that was designed to stir, like the name, stir the hearts and minds, as well as new possibilities for healthcare. Artists, innovators, change seekers, and healthcare leaders converged to imagine better together. Among the amazing presenters, we were able to see Yoko perform her focus on reimagining sound in a healthcare setting. We were deeply inspired by her story, and you'll hear more about that, and her passion to change the healthcare landscape. And we were intrigued to learn more. From that moment, we thought about sound differently, and we knew that this concept had to be delivered to our Northwell community because it fits perfectly with our experience strategy. Our strategy, like you see here on the slide, focuses on the expressed and unexpressed needs and designing human-centered care experiences in a welcoming and healing-focused environment. Northwell is now the largest integrated healthcare system in the state of New York, inclusive of 23 hospitals and over 800 medical practices, spanning across New York City boroughs, across Long Island and Westchester County. We have now over 77,000 employees, and our mission is to improve the health and the quality of life for the people and communities we serve by providing world-class service and patient-centered care. And as Paulo Coelho, the author of The Alchemist, says, be brave, take risks, nothing can substitute experience. In our relentless journey towards excellence, this was the start in our partnership with Yoko to reimagine sound.
Hello, my name is Yoko Sen. I am a sound artist and ambient electronic musician, so I use different technology to create music. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself before we talk about the piece. Several years ago, I had a series of health complications and I had to spend time in hospitals as a patient. Because I'm a musician, I was so disturbed by the hospital noise. So after my recovery, I started Sen Sound with a vision to transform the sound environment in hospitals. And since then, we've been collaborating with hospitals and medical device companies to explore how sound can impact our experience. So it was through this work that I got to meet Sven, Aggie, and their wonderful team, who all share this vision of making our hospital experience more human. Now I am recovered, luckily, but I often think back to the time I was sick, lying in a hospital bed, and how I used to wonder that some people say hearing is the last sense to go when we die. So I often used to think, what is the last sound I get to hear at the end of my life? Is it all the beeps and noise of the hospital? I turned this memory of my personal experience into a communal art project I call My Last Sound, in which I asked people from around the world, next slide please, to share the last sound they wish to hear at the end of their lives. So this idea of making a collage with the voices of people became kind of a foundation of what has later become the film Sounds of Caring, which we will watch later today. But for now, perhaps we can hear a small part of this My Last Sound together. So let's hear a little bit of the piece.
The last sound I wish to hear in my life would be a gentle breeze through the trees.
Or being on a mountainside and hearing the wind go past.
The ocean.
The last sound I would wish to hear is the voice of a loved one around me. To know that they were there for me in those last moments.
Is the voice of my loved ones.
Loved ones having connected human moment, you know, even if it's not with me.
The last sound that I wish to hear before I die is laughter.
I would love to hear laughter, because I think that joy is what I want to carry with me out into what comes next.
So today, perhaps we can start our time together with this invitation that if it could be anything you like, what is the last sound you wish to hear at the end of your life? And yes, Sven, this is one of the things that I shared in the conference that you hosted at Northwell. We actually gathered some of your voices sharing the last sound.
Right, and that what you saw a picture earlier of that at that conference when Yoko presented, and I just want to share a brief anecdote of what happened there, because we did this last sound project with some of our leaders and asked them what they wanted to hear at the end of their life, and presented that. Yoko presented that, and one of the leaders was actually then in the audience, and she stood up after Yoko's presentation, and she shared that just recently, before we presented there, one of her friends, family member, was dying, and she was supporting that family through that process. And she was in the hospital, and she remembered Yoko's, or when she was asked to what she wanted to hear at the end of her life, and she shared that with the family, and they asked the person that was actively dying what they wanted to hear, and they said they were a big Billy Joel fan, and they wanted to hear Billy Joel. So from that moment on, they played Billy Joel, and that was the last sound that they heard. And the family is forever grateful. And needless to say, the entire audience, about 500 people or so, had tears in their eyes when she shared that. And that was the impact that this incredible work has. Now, fast forward to March 14th, 2020. That's the date that is forever etched into our minds. as it was the day that our world stood still and our lives would forever be changed. It was the day that the first COVID-related death was recorded, and it's now the COVID-19 Day of Remembrance for New York. While the world stood still, our countless teams on the front lines remained, caring for our communities that needed it the most. And it was practically overnight that Northwell and our president and CEO, Michael Dowling, was on the national news speaking to a dedicated focus. At the epicenter of the coronavirus, our Northwell Health heroes on the front lines that delivered care for our patients, their families, and staff at unprecedented levels. However, in our darkest times, we remain focused on resilience and optimistic hope for the future. Our Northwell heroes took no days off as they cared for one patient after another. In many cases, they became the family member when visitation was restricted, and many times holding their hands and being there during their patient's last breath. And here's a glimpse of what that time looked like for us.
Michael Dowling is the president and CEO of Northwell Health, the largest healthcare provider in New York State. He joins us this morning.
The issue that becomes each and every day making sure that you have the right staff with the right skill levels. We're well prepared at the moment, and we will be well prepared no matter when that apex comes.
This is one of the most sophisticated labs in the United States.
Yeah, they are among the first in the nation to get approval to partially automate the testing process for COVID-19.
We're ICU doctors. We're used to pressure. We're used to seeing a lot of things that normal people don't see. But this is really beyond anything I've seen in my career.
It's very scary and very real, but the camaraderie that I've seen, I've never seen before.
And it was quite a welcome sight. 46 traveling nurses were greeted by cheers this week as they arrived for training sessions here.
The number of patients coming in each day has been decreasing, and the number of people we're discharging is increasing. That's a good sign.
We were told that over the last 72 hours, they have actually discharged more coronavirus patients than they've admitted.
Thank you, everybody.
Urena Soriano was in her third trimester when she developed COVID-19 pneumonia. She was placed on a ventilator. Yesterday, this moment, her husband put that baby boy in her arms for the very first time.
People leaving the hospital every day. More and more of them leaving today than ever before.
Every day I just feel this gratitude towards my family and friends, and especially towards the staff.
I'm eternally grateful to everyone at Northwell, all the doctors, all the nurses.
For 1 hour, firefighters stood in formation, applauding the hospital workers during their shift change.
It feels great having the support. This is awesome. Amazing, amazing, amazing.
The healthcare system is resilient. We will handle this. You don't quit. You don't retreat. You don't put up the white flag. You are going to win.
Wow, takes me right back, and for some reason it feels so long ago, and yet it's so close at the same time. So here's a snapshot of our response while we were at the epicenter. The first case of COVID-19 in New York was on March 1st, 2020. During the initial peak, Northwell had upwards of 3,400 COVID inpatients in our hospitals, making us at the time the healthcare organization that saw the most COVID patients in the country. And our frontline healthcare teams were faced with unprecedented volume. Like many other hospitals, the lobbies and conference rooms were turned into ICUs. The level of care required was unbelievable, and mortality so bad that our morgues weren't able to process and hold the deceased, and refrigerated trucks were parked outside in our hospitals. To put it in perspective, today, Northwell has treated over 200,000 COVID patients, and it's an incredible feat to reflect upon. The staff were witnessing human suffering and true pain. As part of its ongoing mission to recognize the courage and sacrifice of its employees, Northwell declared June 25th as the Day of Remembrance, a ceremony for more than 77,000 employees to honor the memories and celebrate the lives of the 20 team members who passed away from the virus. Michael Dowling also personally addressed the families of the team members lost. Since then, we've lost 26, and our efforts to honor each life is ongoing. We took this moment to remember the courage and humanity of those incredible team members. We continue to honor their memory with the same strength and courage they displayed as they helped care for others. That was their calling, and honoring their legacy is ours.
Hi, thank you, Sven. Good day, everyone. My name is Aggie Barden, and I'm the Vice President in the Office of Patient Customer Experience at Northwell Health. And I just want to take a moment to look into the chat just for 1 second, just to share some of the things that you just shared with us in terms of the last sound you wanted to hear. And some beautiful things like my children's voices, or the words "I love you" from my children and grandchild, or my favorite song. And Sven just shared with you some of the intensity that we went through during the height of the pandemic. And many of our practitioners actually put this into practice with some of our dying COVID patients and actually had them have that moment to listen to their favorite song. So while we were enduring this most difficult time, Yoko actually reached out to our team to see what she could do. And as a sound alchemist, she felt there had to be a way that she could offer her unique talents for the purpose of ultimate healing. She had been working on the Sounds of Caring project, which highlighted voices of healthcare professionals answering 2 specific questions. 1, how are you feeling right now? And 2, what do you want the world to know about what you're going through? We knew that, especially as leaders in the healthcare space and at the epicenter of the pandemic, that our Northwell voices would be invaluable and represent voices from all across the world. So we would embark on helping Yoko create a very special piece to generate awareness around the reality of what our heroes on the front line were facing every single day, as well as create a piece of reflective and healing art that would truly stand the test of time. So this was a unique opportunity for our teams across all levels to connect around the overwhelming impact of this unbelievable, unprecedented healthcare crisis and share their universally real and raw feelings and experiences. So when Yoko presented this powerful idea to our team, we began to mobilize with connection, compassion, and unwavering support. And our team began to select the voices. Our priorities included a diverse representation of individuals across and within the organization. We highlighted such roles as physicians, nursing, administrators, patient experience leaders, environmental services, emergency medical services, respiratory therapy, chefs, chaplaincy, and laboratory. We sent out a communication asking each individual to submit a single voice note with their real, raw, and heartfelt responses in their personal and private time to the 2 questions. 1, how are you feeling right now? And 2, what do you want the world to know about what you're going through? We then sent each recording anonymously marked directly and securely to Yoko so that she could begin her creative process. So the recordings we received back truly impacted us beyond what we could ever have imagined. There were sentiments of fear, empathy, sadness, confusion, anger, followed by an overarching message of grit and resilience and feelings of hope and optimism for a better tomorrow. This was a truly mutually beneficially impactful and humbling experience, especially for me, because I was humbled and honored to be one of the voices. So once Yoko shared a first draft of the piece, we began the initial sharing process with our voices. We recognized early on that there'd be a range and depth of emotions, and it was difficult to be so real and vulnerable. So, compassion, empathy, connection, and support remained our top priority throughout the entire process. There were many factors separating us at that time, and we ensured connection through connected viewings, sharings of emotion and tears, and trying to walk the journey with them as much as possible. Sven and I actually sat with each of our team members who participated. We sat and watched the entire film with them with support because we felt it was so important to have that connected feeling with our voices. And they were extremely grateful for having that moment and to participate. So once the film was finalized, it was important to debut the film to our 20 voices collectively as a group. Although they had seen it separately and had that emotional time to view it, they had never met each other or had the opportunity to share. So in November of last year, we had a debut. And again, we continued with our process of compassion and empathy and connection and support. And we had a virtual meet and greet session with Yoko and the original 20 voices. It was completely voluntary, and it was an amazing opportunity to join a moment of reflection and heart-to-heart conversation and healing and support and gratitude as we released this film. And it was all done virtually, and you could feel it going over the sound waves, this amazing connection. It was just unbelievable. Yoko reflected that she felt a sense of despair when originally hearing the recordings, and this session, the meet and greet session, allowed her to put faces to the voices, and she felt an overwhelming sense of hope and inspiration among the group. Part of that session included Yoko's personal insights into her creative process, which brought the sounds of Caring New York to life.
So as we are about to do this connected viewing together of the piece, I'm going to share just a little bit of a creative process as to how these voices were edited and arranged to make into one piece. This is a screenshot of the music program I use. So each of the little blocks you see here is a snippet of an audio file. So as I received the recordings of the voices and listened to them, I started to hear certain themes starting to emerge. So I tagged the phrases within the recordings and organized them based on common themes. For instance, people often talked about their own family, like how they miss seeing their own children. They expressed difficult and often very difficult emotions, like how it feels to witness so many patients passing on. Then they talked a lot about caring and compassion for patients, like no one was ever left alone. Lots of sentiment about their team, feelings of love, gratitude, and faith. So I tried my best to capture the full spectrum of emotions that are present in those 20 recordings. So now let's experience this piece together here in this community. So let's hear Sounds of Caring, New York.
So how am I feeling is a really interesting and powerful question. I feel a lot of different feelings every day.
It has been increasingly difficult to talk about my day with family and friends.
Fearful, anxious, and overwhelmingly sad.
This has been a true challenge.
But I think the overwhelming feeling that I have is one of great pride.
And a feeling of love. And I know we're going to be okay.
I never lost my hope.
In the midst of my loss and my pain, I'm at peace.
had to describe to people what it is that we've been going through, I think a good example would be the difficulty I had in trying to follow up some charts that I hadn't completed during the height of the epidemic. I think one of the reasons I didn't go into them to finish them is I didn't want to know who actually had died. And I felt for each day that I didn't open up those charts, it was like they were alive for one more day. And that was just really hard. I remember seeing the names and thinking, I just don't want to open that chart because I just don't want to know. Some had happy endings and they did well, but many didn't. And so I'd want people to know that these patients still stay with us even after they've passed away.
Since the COVID crisis began, I walk across Central Park every morning to work, which is something I never did before. My husband walks with me every morning and holds my hand. When we get to the hospital, he gives me a big hug, and he walks me home every evening and gives me a big hug when we return. There are some mornings I walk alone and I listen to music. And because there's no one in the park, I sing out loud because no one is there. And I cry when I sing.
For the last 8 weeks, I have been working in a medical intensive care unit taking care of COVID patients. The most prevalent feeling for me right now is sadness.
I could not believe everything I was living and seeing so many infected and dying people.
And I'm feeling sad.
I feel heartbroken.
I feel like the nightmare just doesn't end.
As a first responder, we respond to a lot of unknown. People's houses, homes, bus stops, train stations, and you don't know what you're walking into. So the fear of the unknown is often very prevalent.
Many challenges that are unusual and outside our control.
And I feel out of control. I feel like something has taken over our lives.
I was fearful, fear of the unknown.
And what the future brings.
So as a chaplain and as a man of God, I've learned to take my hand off the steering wheel and let God drive and take me to where He would have me to be.
When you go to nursing school, you have this envision of what nursing should be, and you take an oath to heal with your healing hands and care with your courageous heart.
Nurses are nurturers. We help people through the art of listening and human touch. We see babies born and people come to the end of life with our help.
The hardest part during this pandemic is the fact that we're about to intubate patients and they look to us for reassurance. We are their answer. We are their strength, and they look at you and they say, am I gonna make this? And you don't have the answer when you feel in your heart you should, because you're a healthcare provider. This is what we do. And the only thing you can give them is that I am with you throughout this journey. I'm going to carry you through, and I promise you are never alone. I would say that is my defeat feeling, because all we want to do is fix it. And right now we just don't have the answers.
This COVID-19 crisis has robbed us of some of the basic tenets of nursing. We've seen death in numbers too horrific to speak of. As a profession, we are scarred and hurting.
I feel like I will never be the same from this. My career will never be the same from this.
Trust me, I will never take for granted again the power of touch, because in that hospital is the only place where it's accepted. And it's the only place where us healthcare providers can hug each other and wipe each other's tears and applaud one another and applaud your loved ones and hold our loved ones' hands. That is the biggest thing.
Sometimes the collective sadness becomes too much, and we find a small group of us in tears trying to make sense of it all. I think in this dichotomy of shared sadness and resilience, the former becomes, in some small way, easier to bear because you know that others are carrying it with you.
I can feel their pain when I hear their voice and look into their eyes and see the anguish of all the things they've seen and done.
Maybe my personal experiences are unique to myself, but everyone I talk to and everybody I work with, they all have a little bit of that same flavor. And it helps me get through my own issues.
Their caring and compassion that I see brought to every single patient, that just fills me with immense gratitude and a feeling of love.
I'm feeling a sense of peace over the death of my mom. As the Lord was with me every step of the way. My mom was in a nursing home. I hadn't seen her for over 5 weeks. And I was not able to see her. And she died on Sunday, April 19th, and that Thursday, the nursing home called me, and they said that my mother's roommate has the coronavirus, and they have to put my mom in an isolation room. And the room they placed my mom in was adjacent to the parking lot, and I could walk and see my mom for the first time in over 5 weeks. And so I saw my mom that Thursday, I saw her that Friday, I saw her that Saturday, and I saw her that Sunday morning. And that Sunday morning I had been to church briefly in the morning, as my pastor does a video broadcast. And I was able to see my mom, and I could see her breathing and moving her hands. She was 95 and a half years old. I could see her breathing on her own. And as I was staring at her through the window, an aide saw me, and I could hear her calling out to another aide who positioned her with that aide so that my mom could face the window. Her eyes were closed, but I believe in her spirit she knew I was present. And they cracked open the window so I could speak to my mom. And I gave my mom a blessing. And then I left. And within 10 minutes of being home, the nursing home called me and told me that my mom had passed. But I had a sense of peace, because I believe my mom felt my presence. She heard my voice. She heard that final sound, and she had the peace to let go, to head for heaven. So in the midst of my loss and my pain, I'm at peace that I know she's with the Lord. Amen.
I want people to know that as much uncertainty and just challenge that this virus and situation has brought on to everyone, there's so much hope, love, and caring that has just been magnified. And I see every day the caring and the love and compassion of colleagues, of people I work with, who just put themselves in the shoes of that patient and that family, and they do everything they can to make sure that patient and that family don't feel alone in what they're going through.
being with the frontline staff and seeing what they were doing every day is it's incredibly powerful.
As an environmental service worker, I believe my work is very important for the hospital.
My respiratory therapy team who are on the forefront, putting their lives at risk every day. One slip of the mask could be fatal.
I'm proud and I am grateful because my team has been unbelievable and we have done well.
I am no longer COVID ill. I have recovered. I am grateful to be here. Grateful for being given the opportunity to serve, together helping to heal the sick, the frightened. There are few opportunities in our lifetime where we get to have a real impact.
Still have a lot to process, but I feel like we're starting to recover in our minds a little bit.
I'm feeling hopeful that the medical community worldwide is learning from this unprecedented pandemic and that this knowledge will benefit healthcare in the future.
We are resolved to continue.
I'm determined just to make things better.
And I thought we will see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think this light is coming.
I feel proud, I feel grateful, I feel lucky, I feel supported.
And I feel grateful and a sense of hope of the future that we're moving to something better.
I want folks to know that even though the media and the world have given healthcare workers and leaders like me the title of heroes or healthcare heroes, behind that mask, we are very much human. We are vulnerable, we have our challenges and our struggles.
I'm traumatized. I cry. I wake up at 3 a.m. every night.
While ill, our first grandchild was born, and we have yet to hold him, or even hug our own son.
I miss seeing my children. I miss hugging my granddaughter. Although I see their faces on FaceTime, I miss the soul of being with them.
I would like people to know that we go to work every day and we put our heart and soul into everything that we do. And that we are taking care of your loved ones like they are our loved ones.
My family's in there. Your loved ones have become part of our family.
No one here is alone. That everyone, all of these patients are surrounded with such love and caring by everybody.
I'm going through this, realizing I'm not alone.
And I feel like there's no better time to be in healthcare.
And I feel loved by many people around.
No matter what, we were going to get through this, and we did.
I am changed. and we will change what happens going forward. I am grateful.
Very hard to see that, and I'd like to take a moment if all of you go into the chat and answer this question. How are you feeling? And what would you like others to know about what you went through in the height of the pandemic? And I'd like you to take a moment and just put your thoughts into the chat. Thank you. Okay. So thank you for taking the time to write. You know, I personally have seen that film many, many, many times, and every time I watch it, I'm overwhelmed by how it takes me back to the moment, and I can't get through it without a lump in my throat or a tear rolling down my face. And just to see the connectedness of all those individuals. So I want to take a moment and just kind of talk through some of the things that you were kind enough to put into the chat. You know, the loss of relationship, political difference, humbled, sad, and immensely grateful. And we heard that Yoko talked about those words through her actually going through the piece. I feel sad. During the pandemic, I felt helpless. And I think we can all relate to that feeling of being so helpless. And that's why when we put these voices together, we gave everyone a chance to share their voice. And what they all said was they felt that their voice represented people from across the world, any healthcare individual. It wasn't just them personally, but they were part of the chaplaincy or the respiratory therapy team or the nursing or the physician team. Do they need to know they had their own suffering? Sharing that. All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to kind of share. We have loss. Sad, yes, peaceful. I had a feeling of helplessness. I've been a nurse for 37 years and never felt so helpless for so long. It would occasionally happen in the ICU when we're unable to identify what was happening to the patient, and they would pass away. It happened on a daily basis during the pandemic, and we can all relate to that. Forever changed. Still grieving and very grateful to be alive and sharing with all of you. So thank you all, those of you that took the time to share. I'll just end with this last one. still grieving and very grateful to be alive and sharing with all of you. And some things we just need to carry together. So that's what this particular film does. And if we can go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the next piece of this, okay? So the Sounds of Caring reaffirmed our ability to actively respond to the needs of our team members in terms of well-being and emotional support. The Sounds of Caring was cascaded with support across our organization to teams to further reinforce the many well-being resources that we put in place to support our team members during the pandemic. So very early on in the crisis, Northwell Health prioritized emotional and employee well-being and emotional support. And we had several work teams working on building all the resources and connecting them to our staff. So it included representatives from all across the organization: human resources, employee assistance program, employee experience, patient experience, wellness, behavioral health, the Schwartz rounds, chaplaincy, and Team Lavender, which actually will be sharing another presentation through this conference in July with all our work on Team Lavender. And it really involved leadership from clinical and administrative areas. So very early on, we built an entire process to start supporting our staff. And this was actually during the first wave, and then definitely was in place for all of the second wave. So as we look at this, we want to just talk about that ultimately, we will never forget, all of us here today will never forget how our world's changed and how the opportunity we had through the Sounds of Caring to create the time capsule, a timeless gift of honor and a true legacy for continued work in order to reimagine the sound in the healthcare experience.
I wanted to echo Aggie in thank you for sharing how you are feeling in the comment section. I was reading one by one, and I'm just very humbled and grateful that I could be a part of this process. And this recognition from a number of film festivals, it's really a sign to the power of those voices. And I'm glad to know that the film has traveled beyond the Northwell Health. People from around the US and around the world really reached out, saying things like the piece makes them feel seen and heard, even though it's not their voice, it's somebody's voice, but how the things that's shared can be very universal, or how the piece even helped their family members to understand what they were really going through. So the film is now available for anyone to watch and listen for free. No permission, nothing required. It's completely free. So it's really our hope that it will continue to help people in some way. The team at Northwell Health and my team continue to collaborate now. For instance, we have a participatory design initiative to improve the sound of medical device, the sound that a lot of people have to hear. They never changed for 40 years. We changed that for the first time, but really with the voices of frontline healthcare workers and their input. And this will affect really millions of clinicians and patients in the coming days. So, still with the voices of people, but we continue trying to make a change in different ways. And I'm so grateful for the vision of Sven and Aggie and their team to help humanize our hospital experience for everyone. And in closing, I'd like to honor a few people. My friend Tammy Baru, she's a friend who is a nurse whose compassion really inspired this whole Sounds of Caring project. My team at Sensound, without their help, this piece would have never been come together. And Mallory, who you don't really see, but she's behind clicking the slide. She's been really working hard to put this time together. So thank you, Mallory, and everyone at Schwartz Center. Thank you so much for this opportunity. As I reflect on this whole process with Sven, Agi, and their team, I often think of this image of the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with a gold lacquer, with the understanding that the piece is even more beautiful because it has been broken. Not despite of, but because it has been broken. So I hope we can all be this gold lacquer for our communities and our society together. So thank you so much for spending time together today.
Thank you all so very, very much. We have time for questions, and please do put your questions in the question and answer pane there. And we do have a question that we can pose to the team. How involved and visible was Michael Dowling during the beginning of the pandemic and the second wave, and how important do you think it is to have high-level presence?
I think I'll take that. Extremely important, and I can tell you that Michael was extremely involved and visible. He went to every single facility. He went to the COVID floors to show his support against medical advice. There were many people who told him not to go, but if you tell Michael Dowling something not to do, then he will definitely do that. And we heard about that from our employees, that they felt supported. And you have the CEO of the organization, not just on CNN with Anderson Cooper, like we saw in the earlier clip, but most importantly, supporting the front lines. And we also held these events at the hospitals. I remember the first one vividly, which was at our hospital on the South Shore of Long Island, the South Shore University Hospital, and it was this moment of hope that we're going to make it. We've come this far, and that really was incredible. And the same thing during the second wave. And related to that, I was just so impressed with the hard work and the teamwork that happened during that time. That nobody put their egos in front. Everybody put their egos aside. Everybody put their titles aside, and people just worked tirelessly around the clock to save our community. And Michael led.
It's so important to have that kind of presence to show support. And I have found too, talking to our members across the country, across the world, that does so much to build trust. Trust not just with leadership, but within the entire team, really, to have that kind of visible presence, to know that people are supporting you and you're not alone. It's really very impressive. I'm wondering too, I have two questions actually. What unsettled you during the pandemic? Not just from the pandemic, but what assumptions might have changed in your mind as you endured this, incredible process?
Well, there were a lot of unsettling things, and I think the assumption that, or I felt that until that moment, we took healthcare for granted. We took our employees, we took the healthcare professionals for granted, and that, I think, changed overnight. And to see what was unsettling is to see our staff go through such extraordinary difficulties on a daily basis, and they went back every single day. And I remember vividly walking. I also went to hospitals frequently, and walking by the refrigerated trailers that were parked outside of the hospital, and to know that our employees walked by there, and that those trailers were filled, and that's what greeted them to come to work, and just have that courage and have that resilience to, despite that, going in there and to pull that 12-hour shift and then to go home to their families. And many of them didn't. They stayed in hotels. They had isolated themselves at home. But that was very unsettling. Aggie, do you want to add to that?
Well, I agree with Sven, and we did a lot of work with this in terms of, we always knew that emotional well-being and support was important, but now we've made it a consistent priority in the organization. We've partnered with Center for Traumatic Stress Recovery and Resiliency, and we have a whole SFA training program now putting in place. So we're really, we know that it's important not just now, but to always have. And I think the other thing that really unsettled me was that it was very sad to watch family members bring a loved one to the hospital and not be able to stay with them. And we communicated and how they had to say goodbye. And I think that still keeps me up at night thinking of those unbelievable stories with iPads and getting that last visit with the family member before they passed. That unsettles me in terms of, how we separated families and they couldn't be there at a darkest hour when they probably needed them the most. And so we've looked at how we can incorporate that going forward. And I think that anything we've been unsettled by, we've had to kind of think, how can we change that and move that in a better way going forward?
So you've used these unsettled assumptions to propel change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Definitely.
I can hear how your organization has changed and prioritized well-being, and I know you've always done that. So it's hard to imagine how you can make it even more so. But I really admire and respect Northwell. I am, though. I am also wondering about the partnership with Yoko and Sounds of Caring and what that's meant for you personally and for Northwell Health.
It meant a great deal to us because I think what this presented to us was the support that we received, not just from our own community. We've worked with Yoko, we've started working with her, and then for her to reach out and say, I want to do something for you. And when after you heard what went into it and the process was done and Yoko sent us the final piece, it was overwhelming. It was really it was an incredible gift, and I couldn't help but feel like she gave us this beautiful gift that was wrapped in this beautiful box, and all I could think about was, we can't mess this up, we can't break this, and that led to the how do we roll this out appropriately to the organization. And that's what Aggie shared earlier, that we sat first with the people that actually participated in it, and then shared it, cascaded it, and so we couldn't just send it out to everybody at once. We set up these viewing sessions, and that was meant healing, and that's what we saw in the people that participated in it. And it was really the first step of healing, and that was beautiful to watch that. But it also made us realize how much there was under the cover, and how much hurt and grief and unaddressed needs there still were.
Yes. There is one more question. This will have to be our last, I'm afraid, but someone's wondering, Yoko, are you working on other related projects in healthcare?
Yes, I am. So the major thing at the moment is that we collaborate with medical device companies. Typically, people at medical device companies never really thought about the sound that those devices make and how that impacts patients and clinicians alike, those beeps. So we use participatory design process involving really people who have to hear those sounds day to day to try to improve those sounds. That's the main thing. We also created staff tranquility rooms, so those spaces where hospital team members can go to take a moment for respite. So that's some of the other things that we have done.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I loved actually the sound. To me, it sounded like the sound of breath during the reflection piece. It was beautiful. Well, sadly, we have to wrap up for this particular session, but I do want to thank you all so very much. And to all of you who are listening, thank you for being here. We appreciate your time. We do send out a recap of the week's sessions and an email that'll contain the link for you to get CME CEUs for today's session if you wish. And then we also would like to thank our national business members for the year-round support of the rounds and the Schwartz Center and everything else that we do. This conference would not be possible without them. We look forward to having everyone back with us on Tuesday. We have a session coming up called I Didn't Mean It That Way, the macro impact of microaggression in the learning environment. Should be really interesting. Also, we want to remind you all that the deadline has been extended to June 30th for you to submit your program for the Corman Impact Honors. So please check out our member site for more info. And lastly, we'll encourage you to download our app, the event app. Check out the Research and Innovation Showcase. You'll find a curated section of interdisciplinary projects that are focused on our conference themes. Things like my 6-word story, Power to Reconnect and Connect, which is a project by Alexi Puran of New York City Health and Hospitals. We hope you enjoy learning from this wide array of work that we're presenting, work done by your colleagues, your co-workers in the healthcare industry. So thank you all. Thank you, Sven, Aggie, Yoko, Mallory, everybody else on my team, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.